Okay, guys, in Grimerica tonight on St. Patrick's Day, we're recording anyway. We're going to be talking to an Irishman, so that works out pretty good, James Swagger. But first, how's it going, buddy? Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Hey, thank you, buddy.
You got any green over there?
My underwear's green.
Bullshit. I didn't see it.
So yeah, as Darren mentioned, we got James Swagger here. It's been a long time coming for this one. James has got his own radio show, before I forget to mention, called Capricorn Radio, and he's going to be presenting at Paradigm Symposium 2015. He's got a book coming out. We'll talk about that a little bit. It's called the Megalith Acoustic Mystery, and that's a quest to understand altered states at ancient temples. And he released a book last year called the Newgrange Sirius Mystery. I just listened to it on in my little app on my iPhone on the way.
Voice Stream?
Yeah, my Voice Stream app. It was really cool, very fascinating. He's been investigating ancient megalithic sites using science and engineering in his quest to unveil humanity's true cultural blueprint. He's a wealth of knowledge. I don't even know where we're going to start on this one, but it's going to flow pretty good, and we're happy to have you here. Welcome to Grimerica, James.
Hi guys, it's great to be here. Absolute pleasure to be here on St. Patrick's Day. It is my third show today, by the way, guys, but I like to do these featured shows. I do them on Halloween because of the origins of Halloween is in Ireland. It was the last time I did a marathon run like this, but yeah, you know, it's great to do something on a seasonal day. It brightens up the radio listeners.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
It kind of gave you something to get excited about again, too, right? Like, it's hard, since I don't drink as much as I used to, like, used to get excited about St. Paddy's Day, I guess, to go drink green beer, but now it's something like, yeah, you get to do an interview on St. Paddy's Day.
You know, I used to celebrate in my younger days when I was in my early 20s, and I used to be ritual about my St. Patrick's Day, and I actually celebrated it more because I went away. St. Patrick, by the way, was an Englishman who got captured by the Irish, and he was brought over as a slave, which I don't know if most people know that. He's actually not too, his origins aren't too far from where I'm at in Ulster right now, in County Armagh. And there's legends of St. Patrick's about 10 miles from the house here in the valley where I live. But yeah, it's he was the one who brought Christianity to Ireland. So imagine, just on a backdrop to St. Patrick before we start the show on ancient Ireland. But yeah, he was a slave and he got his freedom. He then came back to Ireland when he had got his freedom, and he brought back Christianity and enslaved.
When was that? When was that?
He enslaved the whole of Ireland with Christianity, about the 7th century.
Oh wow.
But yeah, he enslaved Ireland with the Christian movement, if you want to call it. Not that that's a bad thing or a good thing. I'm not putting people down who are Christian, by the way. But I'm just saying, it's just a funny story. You know, most people don't know he was actually English.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Not that there's anything wrong with that either. No. But I spent most of my, I must have spent about 10 years in England, 5 years in Scotland, and I seem to celebrate St. Patrick's Day more when I was away, but it's not something I do much anymore, only in a sense like this guy's doing shows today. I just celebrate it different ways now.
Yeah, I think you guys celebrate enough in Ireland as it is. I was there for about 3 months in 1990, I think. I stayed in Dundalk, right below the border there.
Well, you wouldn't have been too far from Newgrange, just a little bit what we're going to talk about today.
Oh, shit. Yeah, I was thinking I should have been interested in that stuff back then.
WestJet goes to Ireland now.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
No idea what you missed. You missed like a 3,200 BC monument older than the pyramids, if you accept the date of the pyramids. One of the most aligned buildings on the planet, and incredibly intricate. You've got something like 45% of the rock art of the whole of Europe within a 5-mile radius of Newgrange, just beside where you were in Dundalk, and you missed it.
Wow. And you studied that one quite a bit for your book, right?
I did, and I didn't just. I started a book with that, and I finished a book with that. Started with Newgrange, finished at Newgrange. But I didn't want it to be the pinnacle of my research, and there's a lot of people fall into that trap.
Yes.
It's an iconic monument, don't get me wrong, just like Stonehenge. It's the sister monument to Stonehenge. If you're going to talk megaliths in Britain and Ireland, you're going to come across Newgrange and you're going to cross Stonehenge first. Stonehenge is the biggest icon of all. Make no mistake, no matter what country you're in, England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, Northern Ireland, Brittany, Denmark, these guys have their own iconic monuments. I mean, anywhere across Western Europe. Malta as well. I just came back from Malta. I was there early March. Fascinating place. I've been there a few times now. However, I mean, each one of these countries have their own megalithic monuments. And Brittany, for example, there's another one called Gavrini over there, 3500 BC. It's the most decorated passage tomb. Newgrange being probably the most famous, but it probably on a par with Gavrini. But again, these are all the same. Just let's put the cards on the table. These are all the same megalithic culture. Although there's not a concerted effort to come and figure this stuff out. I did come back to Ireland after working as an engineer in Britain, and I'd been away for about 10 years. And it was when I came back actually visiting Newgrange with a fellow engineer, and he asked me some very pertinent questions to some sister sites near Newgrange. Newgrange, by the way, let's just paint a picture for the listener. It's a complex. It's not just one monument. Newgrange is what's in the Boyne Valley complex. Boyne is the river. The Boyne Valley is where it's situated. And the Boyne Valley complex then encompasses some 40 of these tombs, these megalithic mounds. To call them just a tomb is really not helping matters. They concentrate these as a passage tomb. Yes, there's a passageway going into the center of this chamber, and there was a tomb function to it, but there was also an astronomical function, calendar building, expression of rock art, and probably use of acoustics as well. So these are very complex monuments. They say actually that Newgrange is the most complex megalithic complex in the world. Although there are some pretty other complex ones out there. Maybe Göbekli Tepe, by the time they get their hands on that and get that one stripped down to the 20 that are buried in the ground, they might rename that one as the most complex megalithic site in the world. However, for the time being, it is a very complex site. Newgrange alone had a stone circle around it as well, and it's got two sister sites of mounds of equal size, roughly 2 miles from it as well. So 2 miles to the east and 2 miles to the west, you have another two. That's Noth and Doth. They sound similar.
So what about the astronomical alignments for Newgrange? Can you summarize that for us a bit?
I spent a lot of time looking at the astronomical alignments at many of these, and I'll talk about Newgrange because it's the pinnacle one. It's the most famous one we have in Ireland. But my angle into this was, and I'll answer your question in a second. But my angle into this was all these passage graves, these megalithic mounds, these chambered mounds, whatever name you want to give these, from an astronomical point of view. But I was aware of something. I was aware of people concentrating on Newgrange and ignoring the other stuff. And there's something like 100 plus 120 of these across the whole of Ireland. There's some of them in Scotland, some of them in Wales, in England, in Brittany. I've been to now 450 of these across the whole of Europe, probably closer to 500 if I really accept the real data and do the real calculation, but at least well into 400 now. So Newgrange, its astronomy basically takes in the sun. We know that there's an event there every year where on the winter solstice, the 21st of December, is astronomically aligned to the rising sun at 8:58 a.m. A beam of sunlight comes in, goes through a special light box on this winter solstice. It was specifically aligned to do this. You would have to build it from the inside out. In other words, that beam of sunlight hits there in the inside of the chamber. They built the inside of the chamber and everything out around it. So they would have had to build a chamber first, make sure that beam of sunlight came in and hit that position where they wanted it, and then built the mound up around it to give it the finished product. So the beam of sunlight comes in some 60 feet. Now, to put a beam of sunlight in 60 feet and hit the back chamber it's such a sophisticated feat of engineering, bearing in mind there's no doorway. So the light from the doorway has to be blocked. And how they achieve that, guys, is you ready for this? This is easy to visualize. They meandered the corridor. The passageway swings left and right in a meandering fashion. It zigzags, therefore blocking the light from behind it. But as it does so, the passageway also ascends upwards up a very slight hill, so that the direct sunlight coming in from the light box above the door will eventually arrive at the same point as the chamber that you're walking upwards and meandering left and right. So they naturally block the light from the doorway by meandering the passageway, as well as ascending up to where the light hits. I mean, this is sophisticated engineering, guys. It's still watertight today, 5,000 years later. And how we know the exact carbon date of this astronomically aligned building is because when they renovated it, they looked at the gullies. They actually carved gullies into this, and they found some organic matter into the gullies, and they basically made this drainage system into the corbel vaulted rising ceiling, which is quite an impressive height inside. And then organic matter that was in the gully was then carbon dated. So this is rock solid. This carbon dating matches the astronomy too. Now, okay, a lot of people, it's a spectacle. Don't get me wrong. This is a spectacle, and the reason I spent the time on that to explain that you need to. But this is a spectacle where the beam of sunlight comes in, and everybody, like they go to Stonehenge every summer solstice, they all trip off this and they all get out, and all the New Age people, they flock to this these days. All the pagans are there, and that's fine. They're all doing, they're celebrating their ancestry, but it takes away from what these monuments really were. It's the most simple function accompanied by these monuments. This was like the basic stuff. The most complex thing was the other astronomy that happened at these. Now, these things were aligned to the moon, they were aligned to the stars, and each one has its own individual set of alignments. Why they targeted the solstices and the equinoxes, sunrise and sunset, was a very specific reason, because they had one specific day of the year that they could track the stars. The stars change all the way throughout the year. You have summer constellations, winter constellations. Everybody knows that no matter what part of the globe you're in. However, if you're going to study the stars, well, then you're going to have to study the stars on the same day. Don't forget, these guys don't have their laptops with their programs winding back the stars with all the fancy astronomy programs we have today. They had to watch the stars. And if you don't have an accurate timepiece or a calendar, well, then how do you know what day you're looking at? So you need
So
to
it's like a baseline.
it's like a baseline, exactly. It's like a fixed point in time where you're looking at it. Not only that, guys, what the astronomy then tells you at DOSE at its sister site, through a lot of complex revelations that I went into, was that they also fixed the time of day as well as the day of the year. So you pick summer solstice, winter solstice, spring and autumn equinox. They're 4 days of the year that are really easy to calculate. Now, you might think that's very sophisticated looking back at this, and yes, it's a spectacle today, but make no mistake, when you see the sun rise in the east and set in the west, well, in Ireland, it also rises on the summer, it rises in the northeast, sets in the northwest, and in the winter, it rises in the southeast and sets in the southwest. That's very easy to measure out with a couple of sticks on the horizon. And eventually, you will see on the equinox, in other words, for summertime example, right? You take just the sunrises, for example. You look to your far left to see the sunrise in the northeast, and you take the extreme right, you'll see it rise in the southeast. And then you can take the halfway point in between. That's where you'll see the equinoxes, dead center. Now, that's 3 points on the horizon. That's very easy to map out. It's a very easy thing to do. Yes, it's time consuming, and there's a couple of sticks and alignments involved. But the northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest alignments, they're easy to figure out. And in that respect, you know that something's happening on that special day. Don't forget, you have a physical attribute to those days. And in other words, if you were doing that and playing around with the sun rising on the horizon, and this is the layman's version that I'm giving to you for a reason, because not everybody's an astronomer, not everybody's a researcher. I'm giving you the layman's version so you understand. It's relatively easy to do. And the physical attribute is cold days in winter and hot days in summer. So you're going to say, well, the sun's over at its most extreme point there, and it's a very hot day, it's summer, and it's over at its most extreme point there, and it's the cold day, winter. And the days where it's most average and in between is when in spring and autumn in the dead center. I mean, these guys weren't stupid. These guys were highly advanced engineers, tacticians to get these rocks and hewn and traveled over massive distances, really heavy stones. They were astronomers. They were using their calculating part of their brain, very artistic, probably dabbling in with acoustics from my research in my second book. But the point is, these are very, very technical monuments, very sophisticated monuments. Now, when you look at that, the majority of the research into these is not looking past the solstice. It's not, and it's just not there. And that is the main reason that I tackle this, because I had a specific skill set. I elevated myself in an engineering career as a systems analyst. And that's what I look at. I look at complex systems. I don't care if it's the human body. I don't care if it's the stars. I don't care if it's mathematical notation I don't care what that system is. A system of events, a system of data, a system of engine. I don't care what it is. Give me a system. I'll look at it. I'll tell you what's wrong with the system. I'll tell you what's efficient about the system. And I'll tell you how that system works very, very quickly. And that's what I did. There is a system of knowledge at these ancient monuments, and I broke it down. And when you realize that the solstice is the keynote to all of these ancient monuments, they just pick these days, and then you can see the other astronomy that's at play at these monuments.
Do you think it's like a pre-civilization sort of thing?
Well, I do, and I think that for a multitude of reasons. I'm well aware of Atlantis. I have a first edition on the shelf there, and I'm aware of a lot of authors. I mean, a lot of Graham Hancock and Robert Bauval pioneered a lot of research in the 90s onwards for archaeoastronomy, and without that, I wouldn't have been doing archaeoastronomy at these ancient sites. Of course, I found myself back in Ireland. I'm also privy to a lot of knowledge because I've been to a lot of megalithic places. Naturally, I've always been going to these in the British Isles. We've got like 1,000 stone circles in Britain and Ireland. It's like rife with the stuff over here. I mean, you're tripping over megaliths every town you go to. There's just so much of it. The scale of it is unprecedented in that era. I mean, so it's hard not to be affiliated with these monuments when you grow up in Ireland, England, or Scotland. Everybody knows about them. There's an attachment to them just being born here. But to look at them in terms of astronomy, and when you get into it, you can't help feel that this is something prehistory. I mean, we're only scratching the surface. Now, I've provided a wealth of data in that book, the Newgrange Sirius Mystery, and I've brought down the best cosmology of these monuments. Now, I've took notes I have attributed to lunar calculations. These guys knew the sidereal lunar month and the synodic lunar month. Basically, one is 27.3 days, 1.5 days. We use the 29.5 day version. Each one is actually true. One is the apparent lunar month, and one is the actual real lunar month. There's a reason for that, because you have to wait for the rotation of the Earth plus the lunar month. But if you use the backdrop of the stars, or you use the moon to come back to its position, it's just a matter of which one you want to calculate. One is the real one is the apparent one. But these guys knew this, and they didn't know that over a short period of time. That took them a long time to calculate that. Now, this lunar knowledge is more sophisticated than the solar stuff is really basic. You must realize that. The calculations for the lunar stuff is obvious when you look at the lunar calculations. You see the 19 everywhere. 19 is a lunar number. It's an 18.6 year cycle for the Metonic cycle. Basically, if you look up in the sky and you see the moon, you come back 18.6 years later, you'll see the moon in that exact same position. And there's lunar maximums, lunar minimums. When it takes 18.6 years for the cycle to repeat, well, that's a bit different than a yearly cycle of the sun. That takes a long epoch. To see it once, to see it twice, to see it 3 times is the life expectancy. So this is a deep body of knowledge going back a long time. The evidence also that I find suggests, and that's to draw on the archaeoastronomy that I grew up on with Hancock and Bauval and many others at all these ancient sites, was that it's all about precession. And when you see Newgrange, I believe Newgrange to be a precessional calculator. And I have a theory for that in my book, and that's why I call it the Newgrange Sirius Mystery, because when you look at the stars, I mean, there's a lot of these monuments, by the way, here's another one for you. There's a lot of these monuments are aligned to almost due north, but the sun and the moon doesn't go that far. It's furthest is northeast and north of the sun. And so the sun and the moon, it doesn't get any more than northeast or northwest. So that rules that stuff out. You must look at the stars. I mean, these guys were aligning it to something. It's a no-brainer when you look at it. So the more you get into the astronomy of what these guys are doing, it all heads to precession. I have another theory that I developed on my own in the book, which is the Carol Keel Cassiopeia. Now, Carol Keel is a group of these monuments in Sligo. They're just like Newgrange. They got no rock art at them, but they have the same type of alignment style, the same building style, passageways, side chambers, and all that stuff going on. But a lot of them are aligned to this Cassiopeia, which is a northern constellation. And it's only a perfect fit 5 of these basically are aligned to the stars of Cassiopeia, which looks like a wonky W. And it's only aligned in 3500 BC, exactly when it's carbon dated to with the remains that were found inside. So astronomy is the key, and when you look at the astronomy, it ties to precession, and precession, it's a deep body of knowledge that's obviously a remnant from an ancient time. I mean, look at the ancient Egyptians, Peru, all these ancient monuments. They're all aligned to these precessional cycles, and the mythology and the body of knowledge that's handed down talks about this mythology. Look at Göbekli Tepe, for example. I mean, that's just smashed to all the records of a prehistoric civilization.
Do you think the processional thing? Do you think that it's pointing to any certain thing, or do you think that there's a reason some of these, like I know Ed Nightingale thinks that the Giza Plateau points to a specific date. Like, do you think these structures were made out of stone by some pre-civilization as kind of a warning for us to watch out for something that might be part of this cycle?
Giza would be its own entity. With respect to the megalithic civilization, and perhaps Giza as well, I personally think that there was a system of earth measuring going on. I could tell you a list of examples why I think that. I mean, there is some wild evidence going. For example, in Northern Ireland, we have our own specific type of monument called the court tomb. I'm the only one to actually research this. I'm the only one to bring this to the attention of the megaliths. They're indigenous to Northern Ireland only, the northeast and the northwest of Ireland. And these court tombs are basically like a passage tomb, but they have a semicircle on the front of it. And the majority of these are all aligned to the north. What's so special about that? I just mentioned that. There's very things in the north other than stars and constellations. I discovered rock art in 2007 on a standing stone in Donegal, very north of Ireland. And this is showing the northern constellation of the Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, the Great Bear, the Big Bear, the Little Plough, the Big Plough. And again, I think they were tracking the North Star, and I think they were obsessed with the North Star. There is no reason why these guys were so far up the globe. Most people don't even research this part of the knowledge, is that these megalithic guys were up as far as up near the Arctic Circle. They're up as far as 60 to 68 degrees latitude. That's northern Norway. That's how far up the globe the megalithic civilization were. And they were down as far as latitude 28 around the Azores Plateau and 10 islands of Tenerife. We know that because the rock art there is exactly the same as the rock art in Northern Ireland. So that span of the globe is some 45 degrees. That's one half the northern hemisphere they were covering in terms of latitudes. Now, why go up that far north? I mean, they all came from the same culture. They're all building the same stone circles, the same style, megalithic, same alignments. And they seem to have these bases and hotspots. When you look at the latitudes that these guys are at, for example, Stonehenge and Evora in Portugal, the moon does something very, very funny there. The moon is directly overhead only at that latitude on certain days of the year. Well, Nabta Playa stone circle in Egypt is at the 23.5 degree latitude. Well, 23.5 degrees is actually the tilt of the Earth as well. And when you look at all these latitudes, I mean, there's another type of megalithic monument called a recumbent stone circle. And what a recumbent stone circle is basically a normal stone circle, but what's called an altar stone. They call it an altar stone because that's just its nickname. It doesn't have any actual meaning, or it's guesswork what it was used for. But the moon, because it's at such a high latitude, Scotland's about 60 degrees, if you want to call it, on average, as a latitude. From latitude 55 upwards to about 62, I think. But at the latitude of the recumbent stone circles, the moon looks like it's horizontal on the horizon because it's so far up from the equator, Scotland. And it's a trick of the horizon. It's a remnant of the skies of that latitude. Now, they were able to put the moon on its lunar maximum on that altar stone as you looked from the center of that circle outwards. They were playing around. There's a famous stone circle monument. It's like a cross with a circle, and it's called Callanish, and it's on the island of Lewis in the Outer Hebrides. I've actually had the pleasure to live there. It's extremely brutal weather there. You don't live there unless you're into something serious. wrong with you? You're mentally ill or something. The weather is brutal. I mean, back then and as it was now. I got off the plane there to go work there for 3 months in October. Good money, but I mean, it was like minus 13 in October, and the wind speed on average is 25 miles an hour. It's just rough. It's like Canada, northern Canada weather. It's just rough and gruesome. However, these guys built a megalithic temple there because the moon does something very funny at that latitude only. It bobs along the horizon on the mountain, and it stops at its lunar still point, aligned to this monument, which is also aligned to the Pleiades. And it happens only at that latitude. Well, here's the thing. Every place you look at, when you look at the megaliths of Brittany, there's a massive concentrated, one of the concentrated hotspots we have of all these megaliths is probably Sligo in northwest west of Ireland and Brittany. But in the Brittany hotspot, I mean, it's rife. Everywhere you go, there's megaliths there. They're riddled with it. You got the 3,000 standing stones going for about a mile at Carnac. And at latitude, you take the cosine. Now, before I get into trigonometry, these guys may not have called it a cosine. We call it that in trigonometry today, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But the cosine is incredibly important. They may have had a triangle, a stick, to measure the angle up to the stars, or the angle up to the moon, or the angle up to anything, the sun or whatever. So they may have said that the angle of that triangle, or the cosine of the latitude, is equal to exactly 2/3 of the equator. I'm fully convinced that the guys were measuring the Earth's equator. There's a whole lot of data for that. What's so special about the latitude and the cosine is what you use to measure the ring of latitude. So who measured the unit of foot and the inch? It's encoded into the Earth equator. There's evidence to suggest that the Great Pyramid itself has the measurements of the equator in it. Now, did these guys go around with a measuring stick and measure the equator? No, they did it a different way. They used precession, or the slip of the stars, to measure ratios and angles. So they didn't have what we call cosine, sine, and tangents, and the trigonometry equations that we had today. Perhaps not. I mean, they just used ratios of angles, and they could have had nicknames for it themselves. But the point is, there's something funny happening in all these latitudes that you go to. And it might explain why they were so far up to the northern hemisphere and so far down. They were obsessed with tracking the North Star, the tilt of the Earth. There's people think that the tilt of the Earth changed and we got slapped by a comet in prehistoric times. I like that as a best guess at the moment. I just know that this megalithic culture, I mean, they're to just cap the countries. You have Norway, Sweden, Denmark, the German islands of Isolt. You have Holland, riddled with it in Holland as well. Massive stones there. Most people don't even know that. The Channel Islands in Britain and Ireland. That's England, Scotland, and Wales. You have northern France, Portugal, Spain, islands of Menorca, the top of North Africa, the Azores Islands and Tenerife. You have Malta, and all around the Middle East, around Israel and Lebanon. Is riddled with it there too. You've got massive amount of dolmens in Israel, and people don't even refer to. But this is all the same culture, and they were all playing with these latitudes. Every time I look at something at the latitudes, you'll find something funny going on.
And then with the Newgrange, you were thinking about them trying to calculate the precession, right? Which is basically the effect from the wobble, right? So, do you think that they knew about that, or they were trying to figure it out?
I have no doubt. Here's the thing, and I'll tell you why. And this is, I've got a lot of criticism for this, but the criticism is easily squashed because there are other theories too. People think we orbit Sirius, and they base that on 20 years. And this is actually down to Canada. There's two people in Canada called the Homans, and they've been measuring Sirius for 20 years. And I have to say this before I tell you what I tell you. And they have been measuring Sirius and the wobble of the Earth, and they are convinced that we are orbiting Sirius. By the way, Sirius is the fifth closest star to us. In other words, there's 4 stars closer than Sirius. I don't know why we don't orbit the other 4 stars or have some other effect with the other 4 stars, and why the 5th one away from us is supposed to be orbiting us. But if you take that onto effect, they have said that because of the 20 years of data, they have seemed to have something worthy of merit. However, 20 years out of a 26,000 year cycle is nothing. You would need to measure that for about 1,000 years to have anything measurable data that you could say something definite. But if I was to be fair, the wobble goes forward, right, and backwards again as a wobble does. So it would be 20 divided by 13,000, which is a very small number. I mean, that isn't even in the allowable for error or fluctuations. It's something like
700. What?
0.015% of the data. In normal scientific measurements, which these guys claim to be doing, it should be at least 10% of the data to even allow for fluctuations and natural cycles and anything else. So it's such a small measurement of the data, and people seem to flip-flop to it. So at the present model that we have, and precession, I have noticed that the star Sirius was on the horizon doing the same very thing as the sun at Newgrange. In other words, in 3200 BC, Sirius was on the horizon 12 hours later in the same position as the sun. And if it's on the same position as the sun 12 hours later in 3200 BC, well then that's doing the same thing as the sun. It's penetrating the chamber. But here's what I've also found. This is not just a normal, this is not a one-off. This is been happening at the Dendera temple. They aligned their actual passageways of their temples to the star Sirius, that Sirius would shine in. The light from Sirius would shine into the temple and illuminate it at night time. We know this because the temple of Dendera was ripped down several times because precession is an effect where the stars slip over time, 1 degree every 72 years. Now, here's the thing. We know that the platform that Dendera was built on, and this is a good reference point, that they kept ripping after a few hundred years. They would rip the temple down and rebuild it again and realign it, because after 200 or 300 years, the alignment has knocked it out 3 degrees. 3 degrees is the width of the moon, by the way. 2 or 3 degrees is the width of the moon on the horizon. So it's an appreciable amount. Now, when you come to the Sirius alignment with Newgrange, I'm not the first to suggest this. This is in the Ulster Journal in 1983, and many people have referred to this as a possible alignment. But I'm sorry, guys, if Sirius was doing the same thing as the sun on the same day, they spent that long to do that, and they were watching the stars as well. Well, I'm sure they know Sirius was migrating into the chamber. If they didn't notice it in 3200 BC, they sure as hell noticed it in about 3100 BC when it finally did hit the back center of the chamber. And then it would have, after a couple of hundred years, it would have migrated and not done it anymore. Eventually, after about 1,000 years, it would have been so far out it would have never happened. But at the time that we have it carbon dated to, that it was built, the star Sirius was on the horizon in almost exactly the same point. Within about 100 years, it would have been in exactly the same point. And then after that, it would have kept moving on a little bit. So they would have had 200 for the star Sirius to shine in and do this. There's people thinking that the moon was coming in there and that the star and Venus was coming in there. And basically anything that comes across where that passageway is aligned to in the sky, if there's anything in the sky, any star, over periods of time, there'll be all sorts of stuff aligned. But my relevance is the star Sirius in 3200 BC is in that same region of the sky. It's there, and it's non-negotiable, and that's our present model today that we have measured. And it's scientific, and it's there, and you can measure it. Here's the funny thing. The Dogon referred to the star Sirius as a triple spiral, and you see on the entrance stone, when you look at Newgrange, you have this strange, incredibly beautiful art, and you have this central line where the sunbeam comes and hits. Now, the sunbeam hits this central line, and that's what the alignment is to. But to the left of that, you have this triple spiral, and I think they marked the precession of Sirius into the center of the chamber with a triple spiral. That's personally my theory. Now, there is 26 theories for the triple spiral. However, mine is the only one that explains the triple spiral inside, because there is a miniature version, 1/3 life size of the one outside, inside at the exact back center of the chamber. And since nobody seems to link this two up, I'm sorry, the only representation we ever have of a triple spiral is at the entrance stone to Newgrange and the inside of the back chamber. Well, I'm sorry, guys. Well, there's some reason for that. Why would you put 2 triple spirals and never see anywhere else in the megalithic art ever? Yes, there's double spirals and there's single spirals, but the triple spiral is there. It so happens, and I took a measure stick with this, and I've measured the entrance stone to be about 11 feet. And I've measured from the center of the spiral to the center of the alignment of the sun, and therefore Sirius. And it's exactly 1 degree of precession. I mean, exactly. I have that in the back of my book. And that's why I called Newgrange a precessional calculator, because 1 degree of precession is 72 years. It's 72 years is a human lifetime today. It's what you're going to see over a period of time. But to have exactly 1 degree of precession from the center of that triple spiral to the center of the chamber, and then to see the triple spiral inside, I think they marked the migration when it finally did hit the back of the chamber. Is precisely, I think they marked the event with the triple spiral.
So then that would
as well. I think that's probably why it fell out of use a couple of hundred years later, like a lot of the monuments.
So then each ring of the spiral, I guess, would equate to 26 years? No, that's not right. Holy shit. 24 years.
The center of the tri-spiral is where the 1 degree of precession is. Actually, if you look at the tri-spiral, it's actually a double spiral, going one way and one going the other way, which is another symbol for the equinox. They use the double spiral for the equinox, and on the double spiral they have attached another spiral to it. But in the center of that triple spiral, it takes a trained eye to see that. People just see a triple spiral and get confused by it, but it's actually, if you look at it closely, it's a double spiral with one on the left, and I reckon that is the equinox, or the precession of the equinox.
So I'm just trying to picture it in my head. So the center of the spiral is whatever, and then it takes 72 years to get from the outside of the spiral to the inside?
In layman's terms, basically, where you see the triple spiral to the left of the line, Sirius would have come up on the horizon and hit that. 72 years later, 1 degree of precession would have been on the central line, on the center of the entrance stone, hitting the back chamber. 72 years later, it would have been another 1 degree out, and then another 1 degree out. It would have kept going around. So when Newgrange was built, Sirius was almost on the horizon doing this. And you can see this. I've done this with screenshots and computer programs, and people can see this. I've even put in the book. I use an open source stellarium.org open source astronomy program that anybody can check this out. You don't have to go and buy software to take my word. You go and download this stuff for free. Stellarium.org is so powerful. It's a Ubuntu software, and I use that one deliberately so that people could get into archaeoastronomy themselves. It's a wonderful subject to get into, because 90% of the monuments before 1500 BC have astronomical alignments. This is not like a rare occurrence. Everything in the ancient world before 1500 BC has an astronomical alignment to it, whether it's sun, moon, or stars.
How much is there to Sirius, and I guess it would be Sirius and our sun orbiting each other somehow?
Well, personally, I think it's a dark sun, and I think it's either Nibiru or a red dwarf or something like that.
And we're both sort of circling it?
Yeah, that's the best guess for precession. Yeah, let's tackle that one. That's a good point to bring up, because personally, I don't think it's Sirius. There's many reasons for that. If we orbited Sirius, we'd have to be going so fast. I mean, to orbit that, we would be going like at unprecedented rates that was never even. We've no known mechanism that gravity alone can't do it. The discovery of us orbiting Sirius would be bigger, because we would have some new science that was to make that physically happen. It would be bigger than the discovery of us orbiting Sirius by a mile. So even an electrogravitic theory can't account for that. So it's very, very weak in that respect. But people seem to ignore that. You just seem to ignore the obvious. However, us orbiting a dark star like a failed second sun or a red dwarf that's in our own solar system, now that makes sense, and that makes really good sense. The reason we're looking at this now, I'm all on for this orbiting something. We are definitely orbiting something. I don't think the precession is basically a wobble in the Earth. Okay, let's nail this one down. The precession is a wobble in the Earth. It's going backwards and forwards like a spinning top. It's the best way to explain it. And this wobble takes 26,000 years. 13,000 years to the right, 13,000 years to the left. Keeps doing this. There are other wobbles in the Earth, like the Chandler wobble, which is a 41,000 year cycle, but not to confuse. This precessional cycle is measurable. Because we're standing on the Earth, the wobbling platform, what you do is you look up at the sky. And when you look up at the sky, the stars seem to go to the left and to the right, because we're on the moving platform. However, it's not the stars. The stars are so far away, they're fixed points in time. So we're on the moving object, so we're not independent of the Earth. We're standing on it. We have no choice but to see the wobbling of the sky. So It's the Earth that's wobbling. Now, what's causing that wobble has to be something big. Now, they've blamed it on the moon tugging on it. Now, yes, the moon does tug on the Earth. That provides the Chandler wobble, this little bit of a fluctuation, but it's certainly not causing the wobble. And we know that because when they put GPS satellites up, the effective precession should have been lessened, if not diminished to a certain degree, and it didn't. It was just the same. That tells you it's this, and it looks like other planets aren't feeling the effective precession as well. Therefore, it's not the moon. It's like the whole solar system is feeling the precession, not just the Earth. Now, they've tweaked the moon because of precession. Their things aren't in the sky where they should be. So they have blamed the moon on precession, but when they do the moon calculations, they have changed the moon precessional calculation something like 100 times, in excess of 100 times, maybe more. I'm not even sure. It's been changed so many times. It's still not working. However, we do have GPS data now to say that the whole solar system is precessing. Now, what's causing the solar system to precess? There's some theories on that. Because we're going around the galactic center every 250 million years, we could be in this spiral wake of dirty, like if you think about a wind turbine, the air that comes out of a wind turbine has got like a turbulent effect to it.
So it's basically,
although we have no air in space, it's the same thing. We have this like turbulent gravity tug going around the solar system. That could be one. I don't believe that theory. The best theory we have, and the most obvious one, is that we have a failed second sun, like a binary sun, and we can't see it because it never ignited it. It's like a brown dwarf or a red dwarf. Contrary to that, and I will say, we had in 1984 the Japanese IRAS satellite detect an infrared object very, very close to us, and it was shut down. They haven't released that knowledge. So, you know, it's mind-bending that we could even have a failed second sun, but it's probably the most likely candidate out of them all. I mean, by a mile. I mean, it's the most obvious candidate than everything, by a long shot, by a hundredfold.
I like that. I've never even considered the fact that the effective precession could be because we're orbiting something as opposed to the actual Earth wobbling.
If you take everything out of the solar system, just put the Earth and the Moon there, they have a common point of center of gravity. Because one's bigger than the other, it's not exactly in the center. If you had two planets, you had two moons or two Earths the exact same size orbiting each other, well, they would orbit each other exact the halfway point. But because the Moon is 1/4 the size of the Earth, it's off center. It's actually about the surface of the Earth, or in the surface of the Earth, where is the central point where it orbits each other. That's why it's orbiting so close to us. Now, everything's orbiting everything, so it gets a bit complex. However, when we say we measure precession, there's a wobble in the Earth, but we only assume it's just the Earth. The greatest epiphany was that it actually might be the solar system wobbling, and that's because the data has led us there. The scientific data has led us to believe, because we have tried the moon calculations more than 100 times, and they're just not working. They're making stuff up to try and get the moon Earth precessional wobble to work. All we know is that precession is there, it's measurable, it's quantifiable. We know the rate of precession because you can measure it, you can measure the effect. We just don't know the cause yet. Now, you must also realize that 80% of stars out there are binary systems, at least, or trinary, at least 2 or 3 stars orbiting each. It's common, it's the most common. That's only been realized in the last 20 years. I mean, when we started finding binary systems, we went, oh, wow. It's also funny that Sirius is a triple star system as well. So, I mean, again, it's got and they're not normal systems. Most of these binary systems aren't normal. They're not like 2 equal suns. If you take Sirius, for example, it's got a Sirius A, Sirius B, and Sirius C. And Sirius B is a white dwarf right next to a massive sun. And the white dwarf is heavy and white and very, very small, but it's like concentrated. Like 1 teaspoon would weigh the density of the Earth. Like, so a lot of these binary systems are incredibly bizarre and exotic, if you will. But red dwarfs are incredibly common.
So do you think that the ancient megalithic builders knew that there was something going on? They were trying to figure it out, or do you think they could actually already map out the precession just from knowledge of the real ancient past, like the prehistory?
Good question, because precession, okay, when you start devoting your time to watching the heavens, decoding the heavens, observational cosmology, as we call it, and building up a pictures, you don't be there very long. You start realizing where the sun rises and where the sun sets every day. And then you build up the solar cycle. Then you look at the moon and you can realize that eclipses of the moon happen and you can predict when they happen because of the Saros cycle and the Metonic cycle. And you get that figured out. Then there's the big one, the precessional cycle. If you were aligning, for example, a group of standing stones, like 3 standing stones, and you had a row of them, which we have so many examples of in Ireland, in the north of Ireland, and Devon and Cornwall as well, and in Brittany. Well, if you align to a star on the horizon, come back 72 years, it's off 1 degree. Come back another 72 years, it's off another degree. Come back another 72 years, it's off 3 degrees. 3 degrees, as I said, is the width of the moon. So you don't have to wait a full precessional cycle. Again, point that out in layman's terms for you what it means in terms of practical knowledge for the ancients. If they aligned a group of standing stones within about 200 years, 210 years, it's off 3 degrees. That's it. I mean, it's bizarre, like, that people can't understand what precession meant for the ancients because we don't look at it and we don't try and figure it out. Only 200 years. Now, you must understand, some of these, like Stonehenge, was in existence for 1,000 years. There was a series of phases of building. Lough Crew monuments in Ireland. There used to be 100 passage graves there at one point. There's like probably 40 surviving now. These are all built beside each other. And they're all targeting different days of the year. They're making up calendars, like targeting the winter solstice, summer solstice, and the halfway points in between.
Okay, so just so people understand the full concept of that, then. So you mentioned the 3 standing stones and the precession changes the spot of 1 star, whatever that is, to 3 degrees. So does it just keep going like that then until it gets 13,000 years later, and then it'll swing back to that spot again?
Exactly, and that will take 26,000 years to go past. So if you align something to a star now, you come back 13,000 years from now, and it's at its most extreme point, like about, God knows how many degrees, about 100 degrees off.
Right.
Again, and that's what you'll see. But you only need to see something like about 200 years of it to see something tangible, at least about 100, to get some sort of an appreciable, observable. I mean, the naked eye can only observe so much accuracy. I mean, after a couple of 100 years, I mean, most of these monuments are in existence for about 200 years and then left there, decommissioned. And then right beside it, they build another one and then another one. And some of the complexes are in existence for about 1,000 years. So like I say, Lough Crew monuments, there's a phase of building going on 3,500 BC, then 3,000 BC, and then 2,500 BC. So you have phases of building. We know this from the archaeological data and carbon dating. So it seems to be when precession knocked everything out, well, it just upped and started again. So, it's not too wild a theory to figure out how these guys discovered precession. Now, measuring it and doing things with that precessional cycle, that's the clever part.
Yeah,
here's one point to bring in Carol Keel and Sligo. When you understand what I just said to you and you grasp that concept, in Carol Keel, we have 5 passage tombs built on top of cliffs. Now, these passage tombs, again, had the remains of people found inside. They were carbon dated to 3,500 BC. And exactly in 3,500 BC, we see the Cassiopeia constellation on the horizon. It's like a wonky W. It's close to the Swan constellation or Cygnus. And this funny-looking W, or this little wonky W, has 5-6 stars in it. And now each one of these chambers is slightly aligned to 8 degrees off true north, 6 degrees off true north, 15 degrees off true north. Not one of them is the same alignment, all facing almost due north. But here's the thing, when you put the constellation of Cassiopeia in the sky in 3,500 BC, which is where it was, they are all aligned to at least 1 degree, if they're actually never more than 2. So each one of these chambers is aligned to the setting star of Cassiopeia. Now that tells you they use these group of monuments to track a constellation. That's like so obvious. It's you can't argue when it's there. You can measure the data, you can look at the program, and you can just measure that within 1 degree of accuracy. You couldn't ask for better than that in terms of scientific data. You just couldn't ask for better than it. Now, does that tell you that they knew about precession? If they were doing that, well, then they knew about precession. Perhaps that was the purpose for why they were doing it, because they knew about precession. They were trying to track it. Maybe they were trying to track it to calculate its rate, or maybe they were trying to track it. How would you know? You got to put yourself in the mindset of these guys. How would you know the whole sky was precessing? Maybe it's just a constellation, or maybe it's just a few stars, and maybe everything is just flying around out there. How do you know? If it must have been like a hack to these guys. If they put a row of standing stones on the horizon, why isn't it just the one star that's flying off? Why does it have to be them all? But if you started doing this and you went, okay, there's a row of standing stones over there, we have another bunch over there, everything we align to a couple of 100 years later, the big question is then, in terms of philosophy, well, is it the whole sky, a region of the sky, bits of the sky? Well, you would take on a constellation, and that's why I think the Carol Keel Cassiopeia constellation theory that I developed is so important, because it's very rare that we have something tangible to grab onto in terms of research. And when you look at the Carol Keel alignments to that accuracy, it tells you they were tracking the constellation. And when you understand the precessional problem, it's most likely they were tracking that constellation to see that the whole sky precessed together. And it's a very clever thing to do.
It's interesting. It's interesting. So when you mention stuff like in your book, you mentioned the Pleiades a lot and Sirius. Do you think there's a correlation, if we were to speculate a little bit, between those specific stars and constellations being used a lot in ancient megalithic sites and the contactee lore, that type of thing? Like, if you were to speculate a bit, you're going to get into altered states a little bit, which can kind of get into that too. But do you think there's any correlation between the myths, the more modern myths about extraterrestrials from those specific constellations?
Sure, I alluded to that in the book, and I alluded to it for a reason, because I didn't want to get into the Dogon stuff. I mean, when you read the Dogon stuff, it's wild. I mean, it's a whole taboo subject in science or astronomy or engineering, and I wanted to do the cosmology part and the astronomy part and keep it as a separate product for that reason. However, the Dogon have a whole celestial lore around the star Sirius. And they knew that Sirius B was heavy and white, and that it orbited it in a period of 50 years. That's non-negotiable. That's definite. I have found the same symbols used for the same symbolism, the same artwork, in other words, used for the same symbolism. The Dogon tribe, as in the megalithic art of Ireland, we have the triple water wave, which is known to the Dogon and known to the ancient Egyptians. To represent matter and waves. If you follow the work of Laird Scranton, he's done the pioneering research in this. But you also have the spiral, you have the concentric circle. Again, there's another excellent paper called Ethnomathematics of the Dogon by Teresa Vergani, a Portuguese researcher. And when I got into that, I could see exactly what the Dogon were doing with all these symbols. They weren't just doing the same artwork. They were using the same artwork for the same reason. The best one to example is a solar wheel. It's basically a circle that they had with 8 segments or 6 segments. But a solar wheel, picture a circle with 6 rays on it, or 8 rays, a north, south, east, west line, and then the halfway points in between. Well, the Egyptians used the solar wheel, the Maltese used the solar wheel, the Dogon used the solar wheel, and the megalithic people of Ireland used the solar wheel. And they used the solar wheel for the same reason, to map out the trajectory of the sun. And when you tie in the Dogon to these mysterious group of people, I'll draw the people to the works of Marcel Griol and Germain Dieterlen. The best thing is that they didn't even understand what the Dogon was telling them back then in the 1920s when they lived with them for 20 years. That's a good thing, because if they would have tried to interpret it and try and change it. They just recorded everything. So when people refer to the works of Germain Dieterlen and Marcel Griol, it's untouched. It's as they lived it. They recorded it because they didn't understand it, and they just wrote it down for posterity. And we're lucky, because a lot of people criticize the Dogon now, and the Dogon don't want to touch the modern world because they don't get respected for it. But the point is, I have no problem accepting that. Again, all these constellations keep coming up. They loved the Pleiades, Orion, Sirius. The funny thing is, as you look at the sky at Orion's belt and the 3 belt stars of Orion, If you follow those three belt stars downwards, you will hit the star Sirius. If you follow those three belt stars upwards in the same diagonal line, you will hit the Pleiades. If you keep following that line across the sky, you will hit Cassiopeia. And if you keep following that line around, you will hit Ursa Major. It's the same line that goes across the sky. They were obsessed with this magical line that was going across the sky. Sirius is known as the dog star, the Sirius the dog that follows behind Orion. So that's where this is the same line. And when I say it's a straight line, it's pretty much accurate. So if you ever want to find these stars and these constellations, that's how you do it. Orion's is probably the most common constellation to figure out.
Yeah,
I see it
outside our place. It's right there. Every time I look at the sky, it's like right there.
You go look for the Cancer constellation. It's nearly impossible. It's so dim. It's like, or you look for Gemini, the twins. Like, it's some of these stuff is so hard to find because we're polluted. But I mean, Orion's sitting there. I mean, everywhere I've been, Peru, Malta, it's like anywhere near to the equator, you'll see Orion's belt there. So ancients were all obsessed with these parts. I mean, it's the Egyptians, the Dogon, any of the megalithic culture. All of these ancients were obsessed with these constellations in their mythological lore. So was there a reason for that? Well, did we have a helping hand? Did we have contact? That's the big one, like. I'm open to that. I mean, I do shows and all sorts of stuff, and I've had all sorts of people on my shows. I mean, Shannon Dory's a great author on that respect. If anybody wants to get into that, and Liz Cranton, and I really will just refer people to those because the Dogon research is largely, in an alternative way, largely just down to a very handful of people. It's very, very complex to get into. And you want to have a serious lot of time in your hands to get to understand that, and a serious skill set as well. From what I've researched, it's mind-bending, and there's so much to it. I mean, there's so much to it. You got to understand that the Sigi festival that the Dogon had is all built around a 50-year celebration. They basically make a mask every 50 years. And the reason they make a mask every 50 years is because they're celebrating the magical 50-year event of the Sirius A and Sirius B orbiting year. We didn't discover Sirius B or Sirius C until about the same time as Mars and Griala were down there, and that's the big excuse that people have. But they also said there was Sirius C, and we didn't discover that till the 90s with a massive telescope. Now, if you have an ancient culture telling you that stars that are like white dwarfs that are orbiting another star at an orbit of 50 years, and they're also describing the attributes of that star, in other words, heavy and white, what we would call a white dwarf, they said it's very, very heavy, and they said the color is white. You can't even see it with the naked eye. If you can't see that until you have a massive, powerful telescope, well, I'm sorry, alarm bells should be ringing at that point. Now, they have said then that people just made this up and they absorbed this into their culture. But that doesn't answer the Sirius C problem. That just dispels a few of the naysayers, and that just gets a few naysayers in. When you understand that Sirius C wasn't discovered, and they said, no, it's not just Sirius A and B. They concentrate on that, but they said the Sirius C. Now, not only that, this mask that they make is made out of wood. And the mask that they had to dust, literally. They have so many masks that they migrated most likely out of, let's just say who the Dogon, they migrated out of ancient Egypt along the top of North Africa until they got where they reside today in present day Mali. They collect pigeon dung and grow onions and have a very, very rough lifestyle, but they have incredibly sophisticated, complex knowledge, and they have strange mating rites where they have 64 families. They could tell you who's related to who and genetically track their whole family tree on one of their hands using the lines on each finger. So you can break your finger down to the three sections of the three nodules on your finger, and they give them a number system, and they have a strange numerology on one of their hands, and they attribute each one of those to a group of a family, and then who cross mated with who. And so they actually map out who can mate with who. They've got strange Jewish traditions as well, where they circumcise as well, which is, again, not indigenous to that region. However, to come back to the mask, I mean, when they got there to where they reside today, they started storing these masks in a cave. And every 50 years, they would have the Siki festival to celebrate the orbit of Sirius A and B. And then they put the mask in the cave, and they make a new mask 50 years later. But these masks are in that cave from far, and they're dated to at least the 12th century, because that's as far back as they can carbon date because they don't exist anymore. They have literally.
Well, thank gods for guys like you who are bright enough and well versed enough in all these different aspects to bring it all together. To like, we've been talking to guests like that lately, where it seems like to be this trend where you guys are this group of researchers that are pulling all these little pieces together and finally getting a shot at the bigger puzzle. So keeping that in mind, like you're going to be presenting at Paradigm 2015, and you've got a new book coming out about archeoacoustics. And do you know what you're going to present there, or what? Like, you've got all this knowledge base now. What are you going to focus on next?
Yeah. Oh, I've got. Well, first of all, I like to call myself a warrior of the truth. I just want to know the truth, and I will do anything to get there. I don't care. I know, and this is something I've done as a kid. I have this obsession for fact and civilizations, and I will read the 95% of the bullshit to get to that 5% of the truth. I know there's a lot of people out there who will not do that. They get so put off by it. But I know if I do that, I'm going to lose out that 5%. And you know, and that's something that I have to do. I wish I could just go straight to 5%. I really, really do. But I'm able to recognize that 5% so much more easier now, when I can use my science, my logic, my rationale, and my intuition to get there and figure out things out. And when you're a multidisciplinary researcher like I am, you're able to weigh up it from other tangents and other pieces of evidence to cross-correlate. And the more you read and the more wider... I love complexity, guys. Yeah, this is why I do what I do. You give me a simple subject, I would, you know, give me fiction. I would cringe. It could take me about 2 weeks to read a fiction book, and I read a fact book in about a day. Like, oh, and that's just who I am. It's like I like something the more complex it is, and that's what I do. It's my systems analyst approach. The more complex, the better. But like I say, yeah, I mean, my area of research now is the acoustics is almost finished. It's I'm on the edge of that. That was something I was actually aware of at the same time as the astronomy, and we could do a whole other show on that, guys. I mean, we really could. It's such a minefield of research. When I did all my navigating around the research for the Newgrange Sirius Mystery. By the way, the reason that came about was because I discovered some rock art in Donegal. Let me just focus on that. And when I found the rock art in Donegal, I realized it wasn't documented. And I couldn't believe that in 2007 that nobody had recognized these constellations, which, by the way, are so obvious. Not only are they obvious, but they actually flip every equinox on the left to the right of the stone. And I just couldn't believe that in 2007, in our modern era, we have rock art in Ireland undocumented. And still today, I mean, I'm waiting for people to pick this up and carry the research. Now, from that point, I realized something very, very clever. And that's why the Newgrange series was born. And that's why the research I embarked on was born, because I realized that Ireland is incredibly rich in rock art. And when you have rock art, you have interpretation. And if all the rock art is telling you stories of astronomy or altered states of consciousness or acoustics induced, and there's a reason for that, what we call entoptic phenomena, because a lot of the rock art is something that you see in a shamanic vision or state due to either psychedelics or acoustically induced states of consciousness. So regardless of that, we have two types of rock art. We have this astronomy art, lunar calculations, solar calculations, constellations, stuff like that. And then we have this other art. So I realized, okay, well, we got something like 45% of the rock art of the whole of Europe in a 5-mile radius around Newgrange. And I'm like, that's incredible. That is just incredible to have that much there. It's a researcher's dream. And I couldn't understand why there was no rock art anywhere else in so the other domains. And I said, well, we also have all this rock art around passage mounds. And I went, well, a passageway has an alignment. This may seem like a bit of an obvious to you guys, but a passageway has an alignment. So there, if you have an alignment, you have a fixed point on the horizon. It's going to be pretty easy, or a lot easier, to interpret the mounds of Ireland than it is the mounds without the rock art. So I just had a look at what was there, and the work wasn't done. What I found was people were going to Newgrange and Stonehenge. I'm going to crack this whole civilization by going to one monument. And I said to myself, that is not the way to do it. That is just not the way to do it. You look at the whole set of data, as you do with any system, okay, and you look for commonalities. You look for what the individual site possesses and what its function is, and then where it fits into the whole picture. And as a result, I had information abound as a result. And that's why I compiled the Newgrange Sirius Mystery, because it's like a cosmology of at least of the sites of Ireland, because that's where all the data is at, all the rock art is there, a high percentage of it. And I had a definite line of inquiry from the alignments of the mounds, plus rock art to back it up, to give you extra interpretation. And I say that the cosmology of Ireland, of ancient Ireland from 3500 BC, is encompassing the sun, the moon, and the precession. And that's what the main core of that book is. There's other people's theories in there. There's a lot of my theories in there. And then there's other people's theories that are being tweaked by me because I've seen faults in them, and then I've been able to add extra to them from my own insight. So that's why I started the whole research. I never intended to do anything more than that, because I didn't want to. I found the rock art and I interpreted it, and then it wasn't documented, and I ended up, well, what else is there? And then I realized that the cosmology of all these mounds was easier to figure out than elsewhere, and nobody else was doing it in a correct manner. So I felt a duty, and I honestly did feel just a sense of duty to, well, if I had this skill set to do this and I see this, well, then it's going to be a shame not to do that. And I didn't see myself any riches as a result, or I seen it as a laborious task, an arduous task that I didn't really want to take on, but nobody else was doing it, and I was in the driving seat, and whether I liked it or not. As a result, so this is to tell you with the acoustic stuff. As a result of that, I was also aware of the entoptic phenomena, the other types of rock art. Let me just, for example, I had read Graham Hancock's Supernatural book, released in 2006, and as a result of that, he was talking about entoptic phenomena. And when I seen the chart of entoptic phenomena, which, by the way, is concentric circles, spirals as well, which gets confusing. And then you have like checkered patterns, or you have chevrons, like an inverted V, or lozenges or diamond shapes, and all these we call entoptic phenomena. So if I induced you with acoustic field or resonance in the chamber, you might go into a drop into an altered state of consciousness and see these images in your mind's eye or at the back of your retina. Or if you had a psychedelic vision, you might see these zigzag wavy lines and all these this art. But when I had read 2006 Supernatural, which was again the year before I discovered the rock art, I looked at this stuff and I went, "Oh my God, that's Newgrange art. That's the stuff. That's just like Newgrange rock art. Look at me." And I never thought much about after that. It was soon after that. So the discovery of the shamanic art at Newgrange, and I'm not the first to suggest this, by the way. But what I realized is when I went around doing all the astronomy, I was very much aware of this acoustic shamanic stuff going on. And I said to myself, well, I'm not going to go around on a second trip for 3 years around all these 100+ sites looking for this stuff for knowledge. So what I did was I did the acoustics, and I measured some chambers in the west of Ireland that hadn't been documented for acoustics, some other stuff in Peru that had been loosely done, not properly. And I took on some other acoustics research, obviously outside Ireland too. The difference with the acoustics is I managed to put that research on the shelf for about 3 years until I concentrated on what I was doing. So I naturally got led into that just because of the rock art stuff. And in doing so, I separated my research for a reason, because that was the best way to do it in terms of being thorough and in a scientific systems practice approach. And in doing so, I kind of lost sight of what I was doing. Really, these are the same people that did the acoustics as they did the astronomy, and as a result, this really leads you down the road that these guys were incredibly sophisticated. The acoustic stuff, by the way, is easier to measure a variety of sites. The acoustics is rife in Maze Howe in Scotland, Newgrange, Lough Crew, Carrowkeel, the Hypogeme in Malta, some other sites in England, and Brittany as well. And that's encompassing art, measurements with the acoustic equipment. So the acoustic research is more indicative of the wider scale than it is centrally located for the astronomy rock art. So that became a bigger project in a way. So that was that'll give you a good, accurate picture of why I'm doing all this. It's not because I kind of sat down one day and I went, okay, what am I going to do now? I want to retire while I start writing some books. I'm only 38, by the way, guys. And I wanted to get out of my engineering game. And I actually did a physics with astronomy degree. And then I did a master's of research science and society. I was actually going to go and build MRI scanning machines in Saudi Arabia. at the Coast University, and I was going to go and do a PhD in that. And you know what? I'm glad I didn't, because I ended up doing this back home. And you know what? I feel like I'm carrying the flag for the researchers, waiting on somebody else to carry it, but there's nobody else coming. But I do, funny enough, I have come across another systems analyst who does megalithic research in Scotland by some pure chance. And a lovely guy. I hope to get him on the show sometime soon. But he's got a very unique angle. He's concentrating on the Earth measurement systems, and I've picked up a lot from him. There's a lot to suggest that these have a very accurate way of measuring latitudes and longitudes, and knowing their position on the globe. And that's kind of where my research is heading me now. I'm also currently looking at henges. Another type of monument is a megalithic henge. You guys have got henges all over Mississippi there. The octagon mounds and the henges down there.
Yeah, we're now too. Actually, we have
medicine.
We have
I think they're called here.
Yeah, they call them medicine wheels, but apparently they're more like henges. We're henges. We're gonna have a guy on named Dr. Gordon Freeman. I don't know if you've heard of his work at all. He wrote a book called Hidden Stonehenge.
Yeah, you guys got to send me some info on that. I'd really be interested in seeing that, because I'm not aware of that. But yeah, I mean, these henges, I've discovered. I mean, I don't mind saying this on the show because it took me a year to discover. I could even tell you this, and it'll still take you a year to find out what I'm talking about. But I have discovered a numerical codex encoded in the megalithic henges of Britain, Ireland, and Europe, and it's non-negotiable. When you see it, it's like you're going to scratch your head why nobody has noticed this. It's it's quantifiable and it's measurable very easily, and people have been concentrating on this megalithic yard. Now, I have nothing against the megalithic yard. I still think they had that. In other words, we have the unit of the foot and the inch and the yard and the mile, and then people, are a meter. If you want to go meters, and did these ancient guys who built all these monuments have a measuring stick, like a meter stick or a yard stick or a 3-foot rule or whatever, and that's why they call this the megalithic yard, because you seem to have this uniform megalithic yard measurements popping up at all these sites. But I've discovered something even better than that, and I just can't wait to roll that out. That's the one I'm writing up at the moment.
Is it a cubit?
It's even better than the Royal Cubit. It really is. It's actually it's linking up the foot and the inch and a sexadecimal system, and it just keeps getting repeated. The more sites that I find, it tells you that there was definitely a transfer of knowledge. How they had that transferred around is the big question. But all I know is that it's there and it's measurable. So that's something I'm going to be talking about at the Paradigm Symposium. I'm going to roll that knowledge out and blow the socks off of it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I can't wait to be there.
Oh, nice, guys. I'm also working on I'm open to so many things now as a result of this. I was open anyway, but in terms of research, I always want to see science and data, and I just can't research something unless I have something sciencey to go on. That's who I am. It's me. I'm not like a very rigid guy thinking. I'm very, very open to a lot of things. My father instilled that in me. I mean, I worked as an engineer and a scientist, but trust me, I have more of a right brain thing going on than a left brain. My dad's a hypnotist and a healer, as well as an engineer. He plays musical instruments by ear. He can play 7 instruments by ear. He can't even read sheet music. He can't even write his own name. He's a time series engineer. Pure genius the guy is, and he used to heal people with asthma, with hypnosis and stuff. It's incredibly bizarre, man. He's my idol, and he happens to be my dad, And he taught me electronic engineering when I was a kid. I used to build ham radios when I was 10. That's my dad. Like he couldn't do the math. He couldn't do any. He's no academic. He's a left-handed, so he's right-brained. And a right-brained engineer versus a left-brained engineer is just something to worship or idolize, But like I say, he has this natural talent for intuition, and when you see him play the accordion, he's got he doesn't know what a chord is called and what its name is. He doesn't even know what the name of the notes are. He could just play him a piece of music from start to finish. He wouldn't even do anything. He'd just listen to it, the whole thing. It doesn't matter how long the track is. And he would just reproduce it on a guitar or a keyboard or accordion or And just like it's almost like an autistic thing, but he's not autistic, like, but it's almost like that savant thing, and he just has that in him, you know. But he's always taught me to keep that left brain thing, to keep that science, to keep that academia as a core body, but also be that other person too, you know, to explore the unknown. He's an Aquarian. He's very into mystery, very much an air sign as well. He's taught me astrology. He's taught me into anything from hypnosis, mentalism. He's into UFOs. He's into everything. But he's very much a logical, technical guy. And this is the walking enigma. So I'm not him, but I learned to be like that in some attributes and explore those philosophies. But I am that sciencey guy. I need to have that core body of science to get into a subject. And if I have that, well, then I'm away. But I'm open to a lot of things now. I'm looking at stuff from a lot of mythology now as well. Some of the mythology is wild in Ireland. I mean, I keep talking to people, and they seem to be shocked when I tell them. I mean, in the 7th to 11th centuries, there was a lot of books wrote down there. They call the Book of Invasions. The Leabhar Gall and the Heron basically means in English the Book of the Taking of Ireland. And there was 5 people who came to Ireland to conquer it. They took Ireland 5 times by 5 different groups of people. In these books, when you read them, it reads like science fiction. It reads like a modern day science fiction where people were coming in on dark clouds and landing on a mountain and conquering Ireland, the Tuatha De Danann. They talk about breaching these mounds, and they talk about the mounds that the people, the Shi means the people of the mounds, the Din Shi, and they talk about these having force fields around them, and that there was a war going on. They were trying to breach their force fields. You know, you couldn't make this stuff up today. If you did, you'd be getting a lot of publishing deals. Like, but these books are like ancient Gaelic books that are translated into English, and they date. And there's not just one of these books. They actually there's several different versions of these books. So we know that this material was at least original in its original form. Whether you want to say this was mythology or misunderstood history, I mean, it's up to you. But I mean, there's several different examples of the same. The individual books only differ by like a few %.
Or maybe, even understood technology.
Understood technology. I mean, I'm open to that. I really am, and that's what I say to you guys. That mysterious part of me now is really looking at this stuff. As a lot of people think that we came from other parts of. I mean, the Milesians, by the way. The sons of Mil, that one of the 5 groups of people that took Ireland, they came from Spain. We have genetically linked with the haplogroup people of the Basque region. Green-eyed, blue-eyed, dark hair, same as the Irish and the Scottish. And this Rh negative blood group is rife in Ireland and Scotland. My whole family's Rh negative. And extremely large craniums in the whole of the north of Ireland as well. And there's a strange group of people, the strange craniums of the Maltese people as well. And these demographics are just bizarre. I mean, the more you look at this stuff from a science perspective, but I find it ironic that the sons of Mil, the Milesians, we have a genetically linked group there, from the haplogroup and the blood group from the Basque people. Who are, by the way, a strange group of people. They resist. They would rather lie down and die than be ruled. I mean, it's they're kind of like the Irish. Like, they're bizarre. I mean, they are a really bizarre group of people. And they even say that their root language is very, very similar to Japan. I've told this to people as well. And I've talked to linguists about this, and they go, yeah, it's bizarre. We just don't know how to explain it. But a Japanese prime minister got off the plane in the 70s and was visiting Spain, and he happened to visit the Basque region, and he could understand the Basque locals. And he asked them what they were speaking. He says they're speaking their native language tongue, the Basque. And a lot of the root words mean the same thing. Not only does it sound the same and spell the same, it actually it means the same thing as well, on so many counts that it's not a coincidence. So did we come from the seas? Some of the accounts say that we came from the Western Seas, from High Brazil, perhaps. And one location I did look at, and I'm open to this being High Brazil being the other Atlantis. I don't know if you guys know about High Brazil, do you?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that.
Oh, yeah, sure. And again, it's why I researched ancient maps. I spilled into ancient maps, and not just the obvious ones of the Piri Reis and Orintius Phineas, but the other ones too. I kind of went on a quest of ancient maps, trying to look for stuff there too. And I'm a real mystery seeker, guys, and I'm trying to tie it in with megaliths. I mean, you got to understand. Just lay this down on the table before I go to High Brazil. The megalithic people, okay, in Scotland and England and Wales and Ireland. Just take those two islands there, those Britain and Ireland. They're all building the same type of monuments, doing the same type of thing. Same as the links with the people of Malta. There's more links between Malta and Ireland than anywhere else in the megalithic empire. And then Brittany as well, these little hotspots. They obviously all came from either the one source or traveled to and from each other. Either way you look at it, they had to cross the seas. You know?
Yeah, but the seas. Did you ever think about before the seas raised and after the ice age?
It doesn't even account for it. Even if the sea level was down, there wasn't land bridges to cross all those regions. You know, you would have to. Yeah.
No, I realize that, but what about like how long before we can start looking under the water right now for those areas? So you're looking at Göbekli Tepe and all these megalithic sites around the world that are showing to be 10, 12,000 years old now, and yet Ireland is like kind of this little island now that back during the Ice Age, right? It was
a lot bigger.
It was a lot bigger, right? So when can we start searching the coastline with really defined LiDAR or radar to really see what is not natural, what is man-made?
I'll throw a few weird things at you. You know, polar bears originate in Northern Ireland, in the west of Ireland. We have polar bear bones. So look that article up. That's been scientifically released very soon.
Polar bear bones?
Polar bears may have originated in Ireland. Google that. Just spend a bit of time on that if you want. I've looked at it. I think it's incredibly interesting. I think the research needs a bit more, but it's incredibly interesting.
It was all a big chunk of ice not too long ago, right? 20,000 years ago.
Across the west of Ireland, we have a sunken a city underneath like a black layer of soil. There's this mysterious black layer. It's buried in the bog, and it's 6,000 BC. There's megaliths going to 5,400 BC around the west of Ireland, and then we have this gap of about 1,800 years, and then we have another wave of megalithic builders. And I kind of, for that reason, I thought that, well, these people came in waves, like a cataclysm had hit, and there was a series of cataclysms from the Ice Age. Wasn't just one event. There was a series of cataclysms between floods, rising sea levels, and perhaps a comet coming in and causing the ice to melt. But there was a series of cataclysms. It wasn't just one. There was a massive one, and then a series of mini ones after that. So I kind of thought that perhaps with these long periods of nothing of these megalithic builders, for example, we have Carroll Moor, carbon dated to 5,400 BC, and we have in Brittany, Kirkcaldy, for example, another passage tomb there dated to 4,800 BC, and then we have a massive gap of about 1,000 years, and then a big wave coming in again of a megalithic building. What happened for those 1,000 years? How did these people come and just build the same monuments again 1,000 years later, and there's nothing in between? So it's like these people came by boat. This is my theory. This is what I was thinking. It's like these people came by boat, set up camp, did a lot of building, and then another wave of them came in about 1,500 years later. And in that respect, that's what made me look for this. And I came across the High Brazil. Here's the thing, and that's what got me into the mythology. Because the mythology says that these guys came from the Western Seas. When you look out into the Western Seas from Ireland, all you see is America and Canada. It's 3,000 miles away. But if you go back in time when the sea levels were down lower, there is a curious sunken island off the coast of Cork in the southwest of Ireland. And it's shown on ancient maps. It's known as High Brazil on the ancient maps, and that's where it gets the name, HY for high, and Brazil, BRASIL. Now, High Brazil is sometimes called the Other Atlantis. High Brazil is in the same location on the maps as a sunken landmass known as Porcupine Bank, this geological sandbank. It's actually the same size as the map, the island that's on the maps as well, in the same location, about 20 miles in diameter, about the size of London, city of London. 20 miles in diameter, sunken landmass, exactly in the location where these ancient maps are. And there's not just one ancient map, there's a whole list of them, And that's what got me into the ancient maps. And Mercantor is probably the most famous example. What you find is that in the 8th century maps onwards, it gets eradicated and brushed out because they don't see it there. And they sent out an expedition from Bristol looking for High Brazil, and they couldn't find it because it wasn't on the map, so they just pushed it off.
Yeah, Wikipedia still says it's a phantom island.
Well, people say it still emerges from the sea, but that's a mythological. I mean, it may have been so low at that point that only the tip of it was sticking out through the mist. But it's about, it's about 80 to 100 miles off the coast of Ireland. So I don't see, there might have been a time when the sea level was down a bit that you would have still seen it, but then the coastline is going to keep raising and pushing that distance between the island and the mainland, so far that you're not going to see it with the naked eye. I know that I can see Scotland from my nearest mountain in the north of Ireland here, 48 miles away, only on a clear day. So that's going to be the limit of visibility. The nearest crossing between Scotland and Ireland is about 16 miles, which you can see clearly. I mean, it's just across the water. You can see things. Even when the helicopter went down, we could see the heather burning when the British Miller helicopter crashed in Scotland. We could see it burning across the water. So 16 miles is not a lot. 50 miles is about the limit of visibility. But where the High Brazil is, like I say, we have geological data showing that it's there. We have mythological tales from the Book of Leinster and the Book of Invasions, these ancient Gaelic books saying that they came from the Western Seas. And then we have the Mercator's maps and a whole list of other maps showing High Brazil in that location from many of the older source maps. I've even been to Austria. I went to the Globe Museum, especially. I was there for a Klaus Donner TV interview. And what I found there was the Mercator globe there, the original globe sitting there with it on it, showing a more accurate version of what that actual sandbank looks like. I have a high-res photo of that. So what I find then is that all these ancient maps that you look at, they're so sophisticated and they're so intricately made. One of the best ones is that the Piri Reis maps, a lot of people don't realize this. Its center of projection isn't like our center of projection. And this was done by, a lot of this research was done by Charles Hapgood. An excellent book on this map stuff, by the way, is Path of the Pole by Charles Hapgood. And it's got a foreword by Albert Einstein, none less. And he got the American Navy to corroborate a lot of this data and verify it. And the reason he got them is because any military, you're going to have a cartographic section to look for a center of projection. Now, the reason you want that is if you want to, as America wants to bomb Moscow, you're going to put your center of projection on Moscow and program all your missiles as the center of projection. The target is going to be Moscow. So that's why you need a center of projection. The center of projection that we use today is Greenwich Mean Time in England. Been there and I stood with my 1 foot in the east and the 1 foot in the west. So that's what we look at when we're looking at maps today. Center of projection, London, Greenwich Mean Time. But the center of projection for the Piri Reis map is not London. It's Syene, Syene, what's known as Aswan today. And here's the thing. When you look at the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn on the center of projection of the Piri Reis map, it's not in its actual location that it should be. However, it's at its location in 3775 BC. And how you know that is because the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn migrates by a known distance per year. Something like a second of latitude per 50 years or something like that, or maybe 100 years. So you can calculate that rate of migration of the Tropic of Cancer so many years. And if you calculate the distance it's migrated, well, then you calculate the time backwards in time. So then you can date the Piri Reis map to 3075 BC. And that's non-negotiable. That's measurable, quantifiable data. And whoever made that Piri Reis map did it in at least 3075 BC. That and then tells you, well, I'm sorry, but the Piri Reis map is showing topography of and relative longitude of the coastline of South America relative to the Horn of Africa, the western Horn of Africa. So it's not just showing the longitude, but it's showing the relative longitude. It's even showing, looks to be the Bahamas or the Bahama Bank, what's now beneath the waves. So even looking at that, you can then figure out, well, if the Bimini Islands there and the Bahamas is a much bigger landmass than it is now, and then that tells you what the sea level data was like as well. So there's a lot of stuff that you can extract from cartographic maps and the science of cartography. Now, I got into cartography. There's a program called Map Analyst 3.0 that I was using for that. And then again, that's open source. And you can basically take any ancient map or any new map or any map, and you can import it as a JPEG in, and you can take your Google Earth and you can overlay it and measure the points of one on the left and one on the right. And that's the software that I was using. I didn't just go and look at a couple of maps and regurgitate other people's theories. I was looking at all sorts. I had maps there that people. There's the Georges Arguer map as well, incredibly sophisticated. I mean, there's a whole list of the Carta Pisana. This maps just keeps on going. What happened was when the fall of Constantinople, all these maps were in hidden archives there, and they just got released to the Portuguese and the Spanish. And you got to understand how important maps were back then. They were like, to steal a king's map was like the best prize. Forget his gold or his silver. To steal the king's map, I mean, maps were like the highest treasured things. They were so invaluable. I know today, because where I live in the north of Ireland, I live at where the whole of Ireland was mapped from my local town. And when the British came here, they had to use triangulation. And they came here, and what they used was either a church steeple or they used a mountain peak. And what they did was they drew a joint triangle on a piece of paper, and they measured the angles, and they used trigonometry. And the trigonometry and the measurement of those angles actually literally represented the accuracy of your map. So if you measured a couple of degrees out, that was equal to about 10 miles off in your map. So to measure maps, we do it with topography and satellite topography today by taking screenshots and Photoshop and compiling it that way. So our maps today are extremely highly sophisticated. But what you have is rivers flowing, and the tip of North Africa showing as if it's like it got a bit of a curvature on it. It even looks like it's got the pieces that are being covered by ice. I mean, in the path of the pole, it even goes into. Here's a good one for you. It actually goes into. It's showing rivers that are in. It's showing rivers that are in the North Africa, or sorry, in Antarctica, and the ice sheets covering these today. Now, we're told that the ice sheets there 1 million years by the geologists. The geologists have been wrong before; they may be wrong again. That's in dispute. But what we do know is that there's ice core samples taken, and these are in the appendices in the Path of the Pole. And I remember this.
What is it called? The Path of the what? What?
Pole by Charles Hapgood. I mean, Charles Hapgood was he will be revered for his work eventually. I mean, he died with an epiphany. He had an epiphany that he never told. I mean, that's the saddest thing about Charles Hapgood. But the research that he's done on the ancient maps really will stand testament to time, like, and he was very, very thorough in it. But these ice core samples that he refers to are showing river sediments, and the river sediments are called fine, coarse, and medium, basically. So very fine sediment, very medium-sized sediment, and a very, very coarse sediment. However, the fine ones tells you that there was rivers flowing on Antarctica when these ice cores were taken, and the ice cores are dated to about 4000 BC. So the evidence tells you, again, that the Piri Reis map showing Antarctica may actually have been partially ice-free, and the ice core data is backing that up, as is the 3775 BC date of the map. Again, is there anybody talking about this?
No.
Not even that the Piri Reis map is showing South America. Do you know what I mean? Even though there's other evidence, scientific evidence to take this on, like.
Are you hopeful that it's going to open up?
I think there's been a lot of progress in the last 20 years. The biggest area of progress I see, and it's kind of why I'm doing a podcast called Capricorn Radio, is because there's so many authors out there, myself one included. But I mean, we just don't have enough people. I mean, we have enough growth for about 100 times the amount of authors that we have. Still wouldn't be enough to take on some of the mysteries out there. I mean, everybody should be out there researching this stuff. There's no reason why you can't. I mean, there's so much more authors in this field now today. I mean, there was a few handful of pioneers. I mean, you could have counted them on both hands in the early 90s. And that's really blossomed out of control now. And the academia mainstream, and not to speak disparagingly of archaeology or Egyptology, but the mainstream academic fields are really, really seriously under pressure. The game's up, like, science has caught up with them.
Yeah.
You know, scientific doctrine has really caught up with the data, and you just can't ignore it. The only thing you can do is actually ignore it, and they are largely ignoring this.
Yeah, it's a fascinating time. I really feel like with all you guys out there doing this work, it's really, and then all the new media, shows like ours and shows like yours that can actually talk about it and reach like a global audience. It's pretty cool.
this is what I love about you guys. I mean, I'm coming across new shows all the time, and that's another thing. The amount of radio shows that are popping up doing this stuff, and people are talking about this. People are interested in this. People are soaking this stuff up because they know that when they look at the data, they don't need to be a scientist. They don't need to be an archaeologist. They just need to have a sound, rational mind and look at the data themselves. Now, don't get me wrong. There's some wild stuff out there. there's some really wild theories out there. But I mean, it's been flooded. The market has been flooded with this stuff at the moment. And it's either ancient history, astronomy, cultures, all civilizations are now popular to discuss. I remember going through, as a teenager, I was a geek. I was a weirdo for looking at ancient civilizations. I was like, I didn't even mention it to people. I was like, I'd have been taboo. I'd have been lynched. I'd have been chased out of town. But it's popular to talk about this stuff now. Like, it really is. Like, and that's a good thing. It's a really good thing. And like I say, the paradigm has changed and it keeps going. The momentum is there and it hasn't stopped. So, yeah, I am hopeful. I think we have a long, long road to go. And I don't see academia being overthrown anytime soon, nor do I want it to be overthrown. I think it's still necessary, but I still think they need to be less dogmatic, and that's going to be there's a clash at the moment between dogma and open philosophy. I did a show with Robert Boval today. The show Robert's a good friend of mine. I love Robert. He's a really diamond guy.
Quite the character.
He is the little character, but I mean, he's been this is just to give you an idea, and it's kind of pertinent anyway. And I did a St. Patrick's Day special with him, and I forgot to even say it was a St. Patrick's Day special on the show. I got so excited, but he was telling me about this song, and this is the idea of the show, was that CSICOP, this CSICOP, this organization called CSICOP. I mean, they're the most they're supposed to be scientific, and they're the most unscientific, right-wing, extremist Nazi scientists you'll ever get. Like, and I say scientists loosely. I mean, they've even been caught falsifying data to prove their arguments, and it's like they truly believe in this stuff. So therefore, they'll make up any evidence to debunk it. And it's like they just it's not a scientific process, and they're not, and they are taking on very loopy, taboo subjects, but they're also taking on some very good alternative historical, scientific subjects that are well researched and well documented, for no good reason other than just for the sake of it. So you have these organizations out there, and I feel sorry for what he's going through, but he's a tough cookie. He enjoys it. He actually enjoys people coming at him, I think, having a go at his work, and because he's got it backed up. He'll turn it around into something against them, and that's the type of guy he is, and commend him on that. But I mean, he's backed it up with the science and the data.
Yeah, the other thing with a lot of our guests that I've noticed is they've been pretty non-dogmatic, like open-minded. Like, they're the first ones that say, "Here, we're giving you all this information, and you guys can decide for yourself, and we're open to new ideas." And I get it. It's a sincere. It's like a new philosophy or state of being. It's like, here's some data, but we're open to other suggestions, and it's pretty refreshing.
I feel blessed to have grown up in a family where we were encouraged to have an open philosophy. I just feel blessed, and I am who I am because of that. I was always encouraged to be, into the science and the history, like I explained, and I just feel very privileged for that. I just wish everybody had that, and it's largely down to society and the academic institutions having this kind of, it's like a university culture we have, that this university has got everything figured out, and that they are the be all and end all of our society. And like I say, we've got the PhD savant system out there. They teach everybody to be these PhD doctors, and that's what you need to be the pinnacle of society, or else you're not worth anything. This is the money that is associated with PhDs, and they're the worst people ever. I mean, because they get so trained. They're not, like I say, there's people at CERN. I was asked this question today. It's like, people at CERN aren't getting money to discover anything, just smashing atoms into each other and looking at the results. There is no encouragement or incentive for discovery process. Yeah, I mean, there might be one or two people who have that passion or personal desire for discovery, but largely they're not gonna go and discover anything. They get too much money for not discovering anything. They get like £40,000, like about $100,000 a year, whatever. Like it's not paid degree, science and physics. They're just getting paid obscene amounts of money to not discover anything, just to reproduce. 99% of academics, physics, science, chemistry, all of that biology, it's just reproducing already known data, and teaching it to new students to reproduce it again. I mean, the discovery, there's been massive jumps in discovery in astronomy, largely due to our telescopes. But I mean, set that aside, the science on the ground. I mean, yes, there's discoveries every day, but look at the quantity of people involved. I mean, it's largely just reproducing the stuff. The incentive is not there.
I want to ask you more about archaeoacoustics too, but before we run out of time,
I felt like we just blew right by that.
Yeah, because that's a fascinating topic, and I know you've got a book coming out, so you probably don't want to say too much about it. But can you give us an idea, talking about your left brain and right brain and science and keeping an open mind? How did you go about, measuring and testing this archaeoacoustic thing, or even for people that haven't really heard the term or know what it's like? Because I picture a couple different things. Sometimes I picture like an amphitheater, either natural or man-made, that's supposed to resonate at a certain sound or frequency. And then I also picture maybe stones themselves that are supposed to be tuned to certain things. So could you explain that a little bit for us?
I give as much of my book away on air as I can. I mean, I'm doing shows all the time. I don't care if you read my book, or I don't care if you listen to my show. I just want the knowledge out there. Yeah. There will be my book, whether or which, whether I give all the information away or not. But I mean, I must say, jamesswagger.com, if you want to check out anything that I do, you'll see my publications there, or my capricornradio.com for my podcast. But with respect to the acoustics, I actually did concentrate on, at the start of it, amphitheaters, because they're a good talking point to understand archaeoacoustics. Actually, matter of fact, that's really the main inception for the archaeoacoustics research. But again, there's so many ancient cultures: the Egyptians, the Mayans, the megalithic builders of Europe, all obsessed with acoustics, all experts in acoustics as well, Peruvian as well, even down to the Paleolithic area in Lascaux and Peshmerle in France. They're showing extreme knowledge of acoustics in the shamanic reason as well. The Mayans were shamans, the Egyptians were shamans, the megalithic builders were shamans, the Peruvians were shamans. It's a shamanistic reason for doing this. They explored acoustics for that reason. Most people don't realize the obsession that the Mayans had with acoustics, and I actually referred to them as an astroacoustic culture, because they had astronomy as their pinnacle of science and acoustics as their pinnacle of science, equal to each other. I mean, they were incredibly sophisticated, designing buildings. I mean, for example, I give you probably the most acoustically tuned building on this planet is the Great Pyramid. I mean, you may not have even ever heard that. It is the most acoustically tuned building on this planet. I have had the pleasure and I've been scared out of my wits, plus having the pleasure at the same time simultaneously to sit inside that granite box inside the King's Chamber and set up an acoustic field by arming and resonating my chest. And as a result, the box is incredibly parallel lengthwise and widthwise. And as a result, that sets up an acoustic field and it resonates within the box itself. That puts pressure on your head and on your temples and affects your brainwaves by the resonance. And then that resonance then builds up and emanates outside that box. Because the room that it's in, the King's Chamber, is nicknamed, no king's ever found in there, but that King's Chamber is made out of 100-ton slabs shipped from Aswan 500 miles away, incredibly intricately put together without a sheet of paper being able to get between them, and perfectly parallel walls, lengthways and widthways, to specifically tuned dimension, with incorporates Pythagoras theorem and therefore incorporates a phi ratio. Okay, so then the acoustic field inside the box resonates with the room. Okay, and then that room, when if you can do it long enough, which takes you a really deep rest to do this. Okay, and the reason I explained this is just to explain to you how acoustically tuned this building is. Okay, this picture. So it then gets inside the room of the King's Chamber, and then it emanates into the Grand Gallery, which is this bizarre Corbel vaulted chamber stroke passageway at a special incline, and then it resonates there. And now you can actually hear a conversation between the Queen's chamber through hundreds of tons of rock into the King's chamber. And then it resonates the whole pyramid. The whole thing, the whole pyramid literally vibrates to your little feeble little voice inside a little box, because the amplification, the resonance is so tuned. I had Chris Dunn on my show, and he was telling me that he had this, he had the resonance built up by putting a little filter on it, and it said it got so bad, the whole thing started vibrating and shaking. He was afraid of the whole pyramid coming down top of him.
I would have a boombox in there with like some cheap trick or something. You
wouldn't even need a boombox. You could do it on a little iPhone, and if you had that beat pulsating at the right frequency at about 25 hertz, you'd probably eventually bring that building down, because you could do it. Tesla nearly did that with a construction site in America, a mechanical resonator. If you build resonance up, the resonance will build. It just keeps amplifying itself basically until it gets out of control. But the point is, I sat inside that, and as a result, I could actually feel and sense and see the acoustical waves coming out in a 3D mind map in my head, because I could, don't forget that the sound source is me coming out of my lungs, and I'm right beside it where my head is, and my consciousness was affected as a result of the acoustic field, because it's pressing on my temples and I could feel it. Your brain's getting affected between 7 to 10 hertz into the theta frequencies. So although you're awake, you're going into theta frequencies. So it's like you're consciously dreaming, if you want to call it that. And as a result, your mind goes into this bizarre zone. And I could feel and sense the sound wave going to the walls and backwards again in like a 3D wave, sine wave going up and down, but also in concentric circles as well. And this was the vision I had in my head, but it wasn't like a visual. I could visually see it and sense it at the same time, simultaneously. And then that was enhanced the longer I did it into the room. And for the time I got out of it, I was like jelly. It actually elated me and exhilarated me to the point like it was like a placid calming effect. Whether these guys did this, whether that was the function, I don't know. I mean, this is an acoustically tuned structure. Whether that was the function you were supposed to get into the box and do that, I don't know. I just know that you can go in and do this today. But second to that is the hypogeum. And the hypogeum is a megalithic chamber. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of the hypogeum.
I've heard of it.
Okay, well, the hypogeum is the most, if you think that wasn't bizarre enough, I'm telling you, the hypogeum is the most bizarre place I've ever been, and by a mile. Nothing comes close to it yet. I mean, I've been to some really strange, bizarre places, and mostly ancient cultures and weird shenanigans going on, but the hypogeum is a 4000 BC man-made cave system. It's carved down 3 stories into the solid bedrock by hand. As I say, it's 4000 BC. Each room spins off into another tunnel chamber and then off to another room. And all these rooms don't have doorways going into them. They have oval windows. And therefore, each room has its own resonance. And the oval window is like the sound hole on a guitar. It's like a sound box. So if you strike a string over a hole of a guitar, that hole goes into a bass box, that wooden structure, and that's what reverberates, makes that sound, and makes that guitar sing. And it's the same thing. Any sounds or notes outside those oval windows in that 3-story cave system, it resonates. So there is a thing called the oracle hole. Now, as you get down into the middle layer of this cave system, man-made, you go down this dead end, and there's a little carved niche in the hall, and only at the male vocal range, when you or chant or make a tone into the oracle chamber, the whole 3-story cave system resonates to the male vocal range, so much so that your stomach and chest rumbles. It's like infrasound hitting you in the chest. It's acoustically tuned to the male vocal range. It's incredible. You want to see this thing? It's like a megalithic temple above ground. They carved. Just pull up Google images of the hypogeum, and when you say that man carved that in 4000 BC without known metals, by antler picks. It basically, they put like a lintel and a lintel, they put a standing stone and a standing stone and a lintel on top to make it look like a megalithic monument or temple above the ground, and they corbel vaulted the ceiling with overlapping stones, but it's all solid bedrock. They did it to make it look like it was a man-made temple with individual blocks, but it's all solid.
Is that the one that supposedly built to the order of Sendemat?
Not entirely sure about that. First I've heard.
Is it in Egypt, this hypogeum?
No, the hypogeum is in Malta.
How do you spell it?
Hypogeum.
Hypogeum. Okay, I had.
And it's got hexagons painted into the ceiling with red ochre. Again, showing ideas of a geometry. They even worked the natural cracks and then worked to the left of it to get a maximum efficiency out of the structure, so they wouldn't have any cave-ins or anything. They were able to carve that thing out to 3 stories, like I said. And then they even carved the walls to have a slight curve on it to enhance the acoustic effect of each room rather than put straight walls going up. And to overlay to look like it was a Corbel vaulted ceiling when it wasn't Corbel vaulted at all and solid piece of rock. It's incredible. It really is just incredible. It's a work of art as well as a feat of engineering, simultaneously having an acoustic design embedded into it. It's sophisticated. Again, it's made in the reverse negative to look like the temples above ground. It's just like my other half said, this is like Stonehenge under the ground. It's bizarre. It's really bizarre. But again, acoustically tuned to the male vocal range. I actually just came back there from my other trip and another trip there, and I was able to actually do the test with the male vocal range. So I was the only male in the group, by the way. They only let 10 people in per hour, and 8 groups a day. It's booked out for 6 weeks. You have to book your ticket 6 weeks in advance before you even get 6 weeks before getting to the island. There's just a limited amount of people get in every day. But it wasn't discovered till about 1898, which is why it's so well preserved. Somebody just dug a well in their house and went through into the ground and then went, "Oh my God, what's in there?"
Wow.
I so wouldn't have told anyone. I would have kept that as like my little hangout
your little chamber, your little man cave.
Just go. Well, they actually found 7,000 remains down there. It was a burial chamber as well. They found the remains of 7,000 people down there in the bottom pit. Well, you've got to understand that the very bottom of this thing, we don't even know if this goes on further or not. They have sealed it off. There's rumors that it goes down further. A lot of rumors. I've even talked to locals, and they said that as a kid they remembered running around down there and people getting lost and all. But yeah, the bottom of the chamber has a 26-foot deep bass box as well, which obviously didn't climb in and out of it. It was like a deep resonance box. Incredibly sophisticated.
So when you did your you could hear it resonating throughout the whole place.
Yes, you could feel it in your chest. Actually pushing in as a sound pressure would. That's what the infrasound is like. It's like somebody's pushing your chest physically in front of you, like back inwards. You're creating the sound as a sound wave. It goes out all around you, and the whole resonance of the chamber changes so that infrasound is coming back, hitting you in the chest, like you're pushing back against yourself.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. I love that stuff. Because music, certain tones in music and all that give me the shivers. Like they give me that that response, that autotomic, whatever they call that response thing, like that braingasm kind of thing. So I can imagine being in a place like that.
Some people don't actually physically like that. They find it disorientated. I actually don't mind it. Some people get off at it, and some people actually even either feel sick or get disorientated. They just have a real strong dislike to it. But like I say, I found it's like I like any type of it. I'm an experiential guy. I like experiences anyway, all sorts of new wonderful things. But it's like a sensation that's weird or new or bizarre. You don't feel this very, very rarely in life. So it's like, well, no, get over it. It's just like enjoy it when you're there. Like, it's not something that you feel too often. Like,
yeah, exactly.
But
so you're gonna be touring around your home country there with Micah Hanks and the gang.
I got Micah Hanks, I got Scotty Roberts, I got Dr. John Ward, and
Barry's with you, right? Do you hang out with Barry lots?
I actually don't know. Believe it or not, I actually don't know Barry until I met Scotty Roberts. It's bizarre. I get
crazy.
I thought everybody knew everybody in Ireland.
Well, it's bizarre that I get somebody in America to go, and then there's somebody only 100 miles. I actually am going to go and do a TV interview. I do Capricorn TV as well. You guys don't know that, but I've got a big YouTube channel as well, The Slowest Truth TV, about 98,000 subscribers. I market my content there as well. And I got some really big names on the TV show this year as well. But I'm going to go down to meet Barry, hopefully, very early April, to do a TV interview with him. I've had a Skype conversation with him. we couldn't get off I only rang him to say hi to talk about some tour stuff. And I was talking for about an hour and a half. Lovely guy. We were just philosophizing with each other. I can't wait to go and meet him down there and do a TV interview. I actually just got a copy of his book there. I'm reviewing it at the moment. So I was supposed to have him on the radio show, but I know, but I will get down to meet very soon, and it's going to be a wonderful tour. Again, jamesswagger.com, you can see the stuff about the tour, or exodusreality.com, you can check out the tour there as well. But I have another tour in Mexico as well in September. I'm going to finish that on the equinox. I'm going to talk about the Mayan acoustics, some megalithic stuff in Ireland. I'm going to roll out some of my sexadecimal numerical code that I've discovered, and I'm going to do that with another author, Gerald Clark, and that's going to be finishing on the equinox with the serpent shadow on the Kukulkan pyramid. I'm going to do some of the Mayan archaeoastronomy as well that I took.
Nice.
I'm into all sorts, guys, and sometimes I just write an article on somebody and I let the information go and take its own life. I wish I could write books all the time, but I just love the research too much more than the hard work. But I do have to settle down and get this third book finished, and that's going to be my the rest of my work. But I love the tours as well. The tours are an integral part of what I do. I really do love it. And I like the best way to give this information back is on a tour, because when you see the monuments in front of you, you can touch it, you can live it. You got to understand, by the way, guys, we have monuments like Acoustics 3,500 BC, and you can just walk into them. You can just walk in and have a look around. They're not even locked up. Some of like Newgrange is under lock and key. It's in its own field. You're taken there you're on a security team there, like it's like the most prized monument in the country. And then there's other ones like it, and then they're just left there because they haven't got the rock art. So they go, it's not as interesting. And, they're just open to the elements getting washed away, and it's a shame, like. But some of these things you can just walk in and just have a look at them. You're like touching history. It's not like Egypt, Ireland's very relaxed like that. But even when you go to England, I mean, all these ancient monuments, most of them are like, see, Stonehenge now is like ridiculous. The amount of volume of traffic there, you don't even get allowed near it anymore. You march around it on a little pathway, and you don't even get to see half of it. You're just looking at close to it anymore.
Well, it sounds like you got a pretty good balance of everything you do, the research and the travel and the writing and the talking.
Exactly what I have, but I see the whole thing as one project, guys. That's what I do. It's all the same thing to me. It's all about looking for answers. And you know what? I've done radio shows where the knowledge has come to me quicker, or I've seen angles that even the author hasn't seen. I get to share the information back to them and help them out, or they help me out, or I get to do tours and I share with people on the tours. And I get ideas to me and ideas back to them, and people get knowledge back to them, and I love it. They love that they understand something about these ancient monuments that they're never going to read in a book. But the whole thing is a wonderful balance. I don't know how I do it. I do work 7 days a week, and I do work about 12 to 16 hours a day. But it's all the stuff that I love to do. It is all about things that I am searching for and looking to do. There is labor involved in it, but it's when I'm traveling, I do like a working holiday, and then when I come home, I do shows until I'm traveling again. I'll work for 2 weeks solid, every day, 2-3 shows a day, either as an author or as a podcast, and I'll do that for like 7 days in a row. Maybe travel short time, do little sites, little tour, do a lot of private tours as well, and I like that as well. And the smaller tours are where it's at for me, but I don't mind the big ones either. But yeah, it's just an intricate balance. When I do one, when I'm not doing one, I do the other. And
nice.
I wish I could keep going at this pace, but I'm going to have to take a little break at some point and just say, that's it, a month off. Just to say I took a month off and I didn't do anything. I'm terrible though. It's just like, the more time I sit around doing nothing, it's like the more I start thinking on what I want to do next. But,
well, just don't burn out before Paradigm, that's for sure. We're looking forward to seeing you in person there, and have a good trip in Ireland. Is there anything else you want to say before we let you go here and get them? I know it's super late there.
I'm fine anyway. The Paradigm Symposium is my first time to the US, so I'm really looking forward to that. I might be coming from Mexico because of a time constraint, but before I come back from the USA, I'd love to see Serpent Mound. And like I said, it's my first time in the USA, and I'm looking forward to it. I have so many friends in America, And I have so many offers to come and stay, and I just won't be able to anyway. But I really am looking forward to Paradigm Symposium. I love the guys there and what they do, and it's got a great name and it's got a great guest list, and I'm looking forward to meeting the people there. I already know some of them there anyway, so it's just a great way to meet everybody. I've told the guys to stock some Bushmills 16-year-old whiskey for me for when I get there, so hopefully they will fulfill that part of the agreement. But it's going to be a great gig. It really is. And as long as I can come home, and I really just, I don't want to come, I might come home to New York because I want to see the Sumerian seals collection at the Met Museum. I just couldn't forgive myself if I go to America and I don't see Serpent Mound and I don't see the Sumerian collection at the Met Museum in New York. I just won't forgive myself. So that's hopefully going to be my my trip over to the USA.
That's great. Well, we plan to do a couple of round tables there up in our room at the Paradigm. So hopefully we can rope you in for one of those too.
Anytime you guys, I'd love to do that. Of course I would. Anytime.
Well, before we let you go, where can our listeners track you down? Where can they find you on the Twitter and the Facebook and all those fun places?
I've got a Facebook group for James Swagger, and I have a Facebook group for the Capricorn Radio TV stuff. Everything's all linked up on my page anyway for all my individual groups and pages on jamesswagger.com. Both sites are linked, but you can go to capricornradio.com. That'll take you to the free archives. And if you want to become a member, you can go to capricornmembers.com. You can download all the MP3s and play and listen and have fun. And I'm up to something like 250 shows inside 2 years now, and I can't keep going at the rate I've gone because it's just taken away from time and writing that I want to do. But I just didn't want to. I set myself a target, and I always do that. And I wanted a target of 200 shows as an archive, just to say to myself that I covered the certain amount of archaeology shows, a certain amount of astronomy shows, UFO shows. I do a lot of psychology shows, self-help shows, spirituality. I try to cover as many different things, and it's all who I am. But I have that archive where I want it now. And that was because I didn't want to wait years in doing it, and I'm probably just going to take a little bit of a breather now. But again, people can find everything there. jamesswagger.com will definitely link everything up.